Princess Leora stood in the center of the grand hall, trying not to let the silence hurt her. She kept her face calm and steady. But inside her chest, she felt a heavy pressure growing with every second. The selection rite was supposed to be a moment of joy for young nobles of Valora. It was the day when people chose their life partners in front of the court, showing who they trusted, respected, and wanted to share their future with. For others, it was exciting. For her, it was becoming a quiet nightmare. All around her, the hall glittered like a field of stars. Crystal pillars shone with soft blue light, and the air carried the scent of glowing flowers that floated gently above the floor like drifting lanterns. Velvet banners hung from the walls, carrying symbols of old Valoran families. It was one of the most beautiful places in the palace, yet Leora had never felt so alone inside it. Young nobles had stepped forward one by one. They looked around the hall, spoke a few formal words, made their choice, and walked away with their selected partners. Those chosen smiled with pride. Families nodded with approval. The ceremony moved smoothly, as if following a path already walked many times, but no one picked her. Not even once did someone glance toward her with intention or interest. Some looked at her with a nervous smile, but quickly chose someone else. Others avoided looking at her at all, pretending she was not standing right there in the center of the glowing floor. She was the princess of Valora, the daughter of a respected queen, strong in both mind and combat. Yet, none of the nobles stepped toward her. People whispered, and though the words were soft, they still reached her ears. She is too intense. She follows her own ideas too much. She will never accept an easy life. She wants a partner who can match her heart, not just her rank. Leora knew some of these whispers carried fear. Some carried confusion. And some carried simple misunderstanding. She was not cruel, nor was she cold. But she had been raised with strong values. Her mother taught her that kindness and courage mattered more than political power. Her father told her to follow her heart even when others could not understand. Leora believed in those teachings. Unfortunately, not everyone else did. As the last noble chose a partner and stepped away, a deep silence filled the hall. She felt dozens of eyes on her. Some were pitying. Some were relieved they were not in her position. A few looked at her with faint sympathy, but sympathy only made her feel worse. Her hands tightened at her sides. She lifted her chin, refusing to let the shame touch her face even though her heart was cracking a little inside. She was not angry at the people. She was not even angry at the tradition. She simply felt lost. Was she too strange for them? Too different? Too honest? Too brave? Or maybe the problem was simpler and sadder. Maybe she did not belong in the old ways anymore. She took a slow breath and looked around again. That was when her eyes met his. He stood at the edge of the hall, near the human delegation from Earth. He wore a simple, dark uniform. Nothing decorated or flashy. His short brown hair looked soft, and his calm eyes seemed to study everything without passing judgment. His name was Ethan Brooks, one of the human soldiers invited to Valora as part of a cultural exchange and diplomatic mission. He was not a noble, not a general, not a prince. He was simply a man who carried himself with quiet confidence. When she looked at him, she expected him to look away like many Valorans did. But he did not. He held her gaze without fear, without confusion, and without any hidden agenda. He looked at her the same way he looked at everyone else in the hall, with patient understanding. Leora felt something warm stir inside her chest. Something she had not felt all evening. It was not romance. Not yet. It was something even more important in this moment. It was recognition. Someone was seeing her. Not the title, not the expectations, not the pressure of the ceremony. Just her. She stepped off the glowing platform, her steps soft against the crystal floor. Gasps spread across the hall. Nobles tensed. Advisors exchanged worried glances. It was not proper for the princess to leave the center before choosing someone. It was even more shocking for her to walk toward the visitors. Ethan seemed confused at first. He looked behind him as if checking whether she was walking to someone else. When he realized she was coming toward him, his eyes widened slightly. But he did not move away. He stood still and respectful, hands loosely behind his back, posture straight but not stiff. She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the tiny scar near his eyebrow, the kind someone earns through life rather than battle. Her heart beat faster. She knew every eye in the hall was watching, but for a moment, she felt strangely calm. Ethan cleared his throat quietly. "Princess, is everything all right?" His voice was gentle, steady, not nervous, not arrogant, just present. She looked up at him. "No one chose me," she said softly. Her voice was meant only for him, but in the silent hall, many heard it anyway. "But that is not what matters to me." He blinked, unsure where her words were leading. "What matters is that I choose someone who understands what a partnership means," Leora continued. "Someone who does not fear honesty or kindness. Someone who sees me as a person." Ethan swallowed, feeling a wave of tension ripple through the hall. "I don't think I fully understand, Princess." She took a breath. Her next words would change both of their lives. She could feel it. She did not want to frighten him, but she also did not want to lie to herself. She lifted her head slightly and asked in the softest, most sincere voice she had ever used in her life, "Will you be my husband?" Ethan froze completely. The hall exploded into whispers, shock, disbelief, confusion. Many nobles stepped forward as if to stop her. Her advisors widened their eyes. The Valoran guards gripped their staffs tightly, unsure if they needed to intervene. The human delegation exchanged worried looks, unsure what this meant for their mission. But Leora stayed perfectly still. Ethan stared at her as if time had paused around them. He opened his mouth, closed it again, and finally managed to speak. Princess, I'm just a soldier," he said quietly. "I don't know your traditions. I don't know your world the way your people do. I don't know why you would choose me." She felt her heart soften at his honesty. "I choose you because you looked at me without fear," she said. "Because you did not see a position, only a person. That is more valuable to me than anything else." He seemed to search for words, his expression full of surprise and conflict. He looked around the hall, then back at her. The princess looked at him with such honesty that he felt the weight of her request settle on his shoulders like a cloak he had not expected to wear. He took a deep breath. "Princess, I need time to understand this." She nodded. "I will give you time." With those words, she stepped back, giving him space. The advisors rushed to her side, whispering urgent questions. But she ignored them. Her gaze stayed on Ethan for a moment longer before she turned away and walked toward her mother, the queen. The hall remained filled with shocked voices, but Ethan heard none of them clearly. His mind was racing. A princess had just asked him a question that could change the fate of two worlds. He had not expected to play any important role during this mission. He had expected to stand quietly, observe, follow orders, and return home. But now everything felt different. He remembered how she had looked at him. Not with desperation, not with pressure, with sincerity. She had trusted him enough to choose him. Even though he was a stranger from another world, he did not know what his answer should be. He did not know what the right choice was, but he knew that she had spoken from her heart, and that alone deserved respect. Later that evening, Leora sat alone on her balcony. The sky of Valora sparkled with floating lights that resembled stars drifting through wind. Dancing softly above the city, she watched them and tried to calm the storm inside her. She felt embarrassed, hopeful, nervous, and strangely free all at once. She had broken a tradition. She had shocked her people. She had asked a human soldier to be her partner, but she had no regrets. Somewhere in the palace, Ethan stood by a window, thinking deeply. He thought about her bravery, about the loneliness in her eyes during the ceremony, and about the courage it took for her to step away from the center and walk to him. He felt a strange pull inside himself, a sense that this was not a random moment. It was something important, something meaningful. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He owed her an honest answer. She deserved nothing less, and that answer would shape everything that came next. For him, for her, and for both of their worlds. The palace felt different the next morning. It was quieter, heavier, and full of conversations that stopped whenever Princess Leora entered a room. Servants walked softly, guards kept glancing at each other, and nobles whispered behind closed doors. Word had spread fast across Valora. The princess had asked a human soldier to become her husband. It was something no one had ever expected, and no one knew what it meant for the future of their world. Leora tried to stay calm, but her mind kept returning to the same question. What would Ethan choose? She had given him time. She wanted him to understand her reasons. But waiting was harder than she thought. Every hour felt longer than the hour before. Every moment made her wonder whether she had made a mistake or whether she had taken the most honest step of her life. Ethan woke early too. He stood at the window of the guest quarters, watching the soft lights float through the morning sky. Valora looked peaceful from above, like a world that had never known war or pain, but he knew that peace was never simple. Every society had hidden struggles, and he suspected that Leora's world was no different. His mind kept returning to her eyes. They were strong, brave, but also lonely. When she had spoken to him, there was no pride in her voice, only honesty. She had not chosen him because she needed help or protection. She had chosen him because she believed he was someone who understood her heart. Ethan was not used to such trust. He had trained as a soldier for years, learning discipline and strength, but he had never expected to be asked such a personal question by someone from another world. The palace guards knocked on his door near mid-morning. One of them, a tall Valoran with calm silver eyes, bowed lightly and said, "Princess Leora requests your presence in the garden when you are ready." Ethan nodded. "I'll be there soon." He took a moment to breathe before leaving the room. He wanted to say the right thing. He wanted to respect her feelings. But he also needed to think about the weight of the decision. If he said yes, he would become a part of Valora's royal family. His life would change completely. If he said no, he risked hurting someone who had shown him more honesty than anyone else in this palace. When he arrived at the garden, he found Leora standing near a pool of glowing water. The garden was quiet, full of soft lights and gentle plants that moved as if breathing. Valoran gardens were different from Earth gardens. They felt alive in every sense, almost like the plants understood emotions. Leora turned when she heard him. "Thank you for coming." Ethan nodded. She motioned for him to walk with her. They moved slowly along a path of shining stones. The sunlight touched the floating flowers, making them shimmer like small stars. "I know you are under pressure," she began. "I did not ask you yesterday because of tradition or duty. I asked because I felt something real." "I know," Ethan said gently. "That's why I'm taking this seriously." She looked at him with hopeful eyes. "Have you decided?" He hesitated. "I've been thinking a lot. I'm honored that you chose me. Truly. But I need to understand what this means for your world, for your people, and for you. You barely know me." Leora smiled softly. "I know your heart. Yesterday, when the raiders attacked the outskirts, you rushed out without waiting for orders. You saved civilians you had never met. You protected them because it was the right thing to do. Many of my people would have waited for permission. You acted with courage and kindness." Ethan looked down at the stone path. "I did what any decent person would do." "Not everyone does that," she replied quietly. "And when no one chose me during the ceremony, you did not look at me with pity. You looked at me with understanding. That meant more to me than you can imagine." He stopped walking. "But why me? I'm not from your world. I don't know your customs, your politics, or your future." She turned toward him. "Because I want a partner who chooses me as a person. Not as a princess. Not as a political tool. Just me. And yesterday, when you looked at me, I felt seen for the first time in many years." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had not expected her to speak so openly. He respected her more, with every word she spoke. Before either of them could continue, a loud chime echoed through the garden. A group of nobles approached with hurried expressions. One of them, an older man with pale blue skin and sharp eyes, stepped forward. "Princess Leora, the council demands your presence," he said. "We must discuss the situation you created." Leora's expression hardened slightly. "I will speak with the council when I am ready." "Princess," the man insisted, "your choice affects Velora's future, bringing an outsider into the royal bond. In 7th. Think you do they? Were vility." Ethan stepped forward calmly. "If I'm causing trouble, I'll leave." Leora turned to him quickly. "No, you are not the problem." The noble looked at Ethan with clear disapproval. "Human soldier, your presence here is tolerated as part of a peaceful exchange. It is not meant for royal involvement." Ethan held himself steady. "I never meant to cause any disruption." Leora's voice became firm. "Ethan, do not blame yourself. They are afraid of change." The noble opened his mouth to argue again, but Leora raised her hand, and he fell silent. She turned back to Ethan. "Would you walk with me again later tonight?" she asked quietly. "I want to finish this conversation without interruption." Ethan nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." The nobles escorted Leora away, leaving Ethan alone in the glowing garden. He watched her go, feeling both worry and admiration. She was strong, but he could see the weight she carried. He knew she needed support, not just a partner in name. He wondered if he could be the kind of person she needed. That evening, when the sky turned purple and silver, Ethan returned to the garden. Leora was already there, sitting by the glowing pool with her feet in the soft water. She looked peaceful, though he could see the tension in her shoulders. "You're back," she said with a smile. "I said I would be," Ethan answered. They sat together in quiet for a moment before she spoke again. "The council is upset. They think choosing you will cause political trouble. They want me to choose a Veloran noble instead." "And what do you want?" Ethan asked. She looked at him with honest eyes. "I want someone who respects me. I want someone who will stand beside me, not above me or below me. I want someone who will be a true partner, whether the council likes it or not." Ethan thought for a long moment before responding. "Leora, I respect you. More than I can say. But marriage is a big choice, even on Earth, and for your world, it seems even bigger." She nodded slowly. "I know. I do not ask you to decide quickly. I only ask you to think with your heart, not with fear." He gave a small smile. "I'm not afraid. I'm just cautious. But I want to understand more about your world, about what being your husband would mean." She brightened a little. "Then spend time with me. Ask me anything. Learn anything you want. Let your decision come naturally." Ethan looked at her hands, resting gently in her lap. After a second of hesitation, he reached out and placed his hand near hers, not touching, but close enough that she noticed. She smiled at the gesture. "I want to know you better," he said softly. "Not as a princess, as Leora." "And I want to know you better," she replied just as softly. "Not as a soldier, as Ethan." They spent the next hours talking about their lives. Leora told him about growing up in the palace, about the expectations placed on her, and about her dreams of changing old traditions that no longer made sense. Ethan told her about Earth, about his family, his training, and his hopes for the future. He told her about the loneliness that sometimes came with being a soldier, and how he learned to find peace in simple things. They laughed quietly about small differences between their worlds. They shared stories about mistakes they made when they were younger. Leora found herself relaxing more than she had in months. Ethan felt a warmth he had not felt in years. As the night grew darker and the garden lights floated gently around them, something changed between them. It was not sudden, not dramatic. It was soft and natural, like the first breeze before sunrise. Leora felt safe, heard, and understood. Ethan felt trusted in a way he had never experienced. Before they parted, she looked at him with a hopeful expression. "Ethan, when you decide, whatever your choice is, Please tell me directly." "I will," he promised. "And if you choose no," she added softly, "I will accept it. I will not blame you." "And if I choose yes?" he asked. She smiled in a way that made his heart feel warm. "Then we will walk into the future together." They both stood. And for a long moment, neither of them moved. The soft lights floated around them like tiny stars, and the night air felt gentle and calm. When they finally walked away from each other, both of them felt that something important had begun, something that neither tradition nor fear could easily stop. Ethan did not have an answer yet, but he was closer to one than he had been that morning, and Leora believed, deep in her heart, that whatever his answer would be, it would come from truth, not pressure, not confusion, but truth. That was all she wanted. The sun rose slowly over Valora the next morning, filling the palace with soft golden light. Princess Leora barely slept the night before. She kept thinking about Ethan, about his gentle voice, about the way he listened, about the way he respected her feelings. She knew he had not yet given an answer, and she wanted him to take his time, but waiting still made her heart restless. The palace was noisy with whispers. Servants talked quietly as they moved through the halls. Guards stood straighter than usual, watching every entrance. Nobles walked quickly, their robes swaying, their faces stiff with worry or anger. The Great Council had called an emergency meeting again, and Leora's choice remained the main topic. Leora walked through the halls pretending not to hear the whispers, but she heard them all. She must choose a Valoran. A human cannot be part of our royal family. What if he does not understand our customs? What if this changes everything? She stayed calm, but each whisper felt like a stone pressing down on her heart. She did not regret choosing Ethan, but she hated how much fear her choice created. She wished her world were more open to change. She wished her people could see what she saw in him. Ethan, on the other side of the palace, sat in his small guest room again. He had also slept very little. He thought about Leora's eyes, her voice, her honesty. He thought about the council's anger, the pressure from the nobles, and the weight of her position. He thought about how she wanted a partner who respected her, someone who would stand next to her, without fear. He remembered the moment she had asked him if he would be her husband. He remembered how sincere she looked. He remembered how she gave him time instead of demanding an answer. He stood up, took a deep breath, and made a decision. A real one from his heart. But before he could go find Leora, the palace shook with a deep rumbling sound. The windows trembled. The lights flickered. Guards shouted in the hallways. Ethan rushed out of his room, already prepared to act. A young Valoran guard ran past him and shouted, "Raiders! They are attacking the outer gates again." This was not the first attack since the ceremony, but this one felt stronger, louder, closer. Ethan did not wait for orders. He ran toward the sound of shouting, following the guards. He knew where the outer gates were from his earlier tour with the human delegation. He ran with purpose, his heart pounding but his mind clear. Leora heard the alarms too. She ran toward the courtyard as fast as she could. Her long coat flew behind her as she moved. She knew the raiders had been testing the city's defenses for weeks, but she did not expect another attack so soon, and she definitely did not expect it today, when emotions in the palace were already tense and fragile. When she reached the gates, she saw chaos. Raiders in dark armor pushed against the crystal barriers. Valoran guards fought bravely. But the attack was strong. The barrier lights flickered, and cracks spread through the shining walls. Ethan arrived seconds later, pushing through panicked servants and guards. He recognized the enemy style instantly. They were not random raiders. They were organized, disciplined, and well-armed. Someone wanted to shake Valora at its weakest moment. Without thinking, Ethan jumped in to help. He grabbed a fallen guard's staff weapon, tried to understand its controls for a moment, then activated it. A bright line of energy shot from the tip when he swung it. He swung again, pushing one attacker back. Several guards noticed his help and shouted encouragement. They respected bravery, even from a human. Leora saw him fighting and felt something inside her chest burn with pride. She shouted, "Ethan, stay close to me," but he did not hear her over the noise. He was focused on protecting the nearest civilians and guards. He fought with careful strength, using his training but adapting to the alien weapon. Every move showed his courage. The council advisor who had scolded Ethan earlier watched from a distance with shock. "He fights as one of us," the advisor whispered. Leora stepped forward and used her own energy staff. She moved like flowing water, each strike precise and powerful. She had trained since childhood, and today she fought not as a princess but as a warrior. When she reached Ethan, they fought side by side. Their movements matched strangely well, almost as if they had trained together before. He blocked attacks she could not see. She covered his blind spots. They moved as one without speaking. But then, a loud cracking sound echoed through the air. A large part of the crystal barrier broke. Raiders poured through the gap, and the small group of guards struggled to hold them back. Ethan grabbed Leora's arm, pulling her aside before a blast hit the ground where she had been standing. "Are you all right?" Ethan shouted. "Yes," she answered. "Stay with me." They continued fighting. Sweat covered Ethan's forehead. Leora's hair stuck to her face. But neither of them slowed down. They pushed forward again and again until finally, the raiders began to retreat. The Valoran guards chased them out, sealing the remaining gaps in the barrier. Silence slowly returned, broken only by heavy breathing and distant alarms fading away. Ethan leaned against a crystal pillar, catching his breath. Leora stood near him, also breathing hard, her chest rising and falling quickly. She looked at him with awe. "You saved many lives today," she said softly. Ethan shook his head. "So did you." A group of nobles came rushing toward them, followed by guards and advisors. Their faces were full of worry. But when they saw Ethan standing beside Leora, their expressions changed. Some looked surprised. Some looked thoughtful. Some looked ashamed for doubting him. The older advisor, the one who had spoken rudely before, stepped forward. He looked at the damage around the gates. He looked at the frightened civilians who were still being helped, and then he looked at Ethan. He bowed his head slightly. "Human soldier, today you protected our people. You protected our princess. For that, Valora owes you thanks." Ethan nodded respectfully. "I only did what was right." The advisor hesitated before speaking again. "Perhaps we judged too quickly. Perhaps you are not the danger we feared." Leora looked at Ethan with pride in her eyes. She whispered so only he could hear. "Do you see? They are starting to understand." Ethan felt a strange warmth inside. For the first time, he felt like he belonged here, not as a visitor, but as someone who mattered. Later that afternoon, when the crisis was over and the palace returned to calm, Leora asked Ethan to meet her in the same glowing garden where they had talked before. He walked there slowly. Thinking deeply, he knew he needed to speak honestly. He knew he needed to give her an answer. She waited for him near the pool again, sitting quietly with her feet in the water. She smiled gently when he arrived. "You came," she said softly. "Of course I came," Ethan replied. He sat beside her, his heart beating fast. The floating lights drifted around them like small stars moving through water. She looked at him with hopeful eyes. "Have you decided?" Ethan took a deep breath. He looked at her face, at the way her eyes reflected the garden lights, at the way she waited with trust instead of pressure. "Yes," he said quietly. "I've made my decision." She held her breath, her hands tightening slightly. "I want to stay by your side," Ethan continued. "Not because you are a princess. Not because of tradition. But because I respect you. Because you are brave, honest, and kind. Because I feel something real when I'm with you." Her eyes softened with emotion. He gave a small smile. "So, yes." For a long moment, Leora did not move. Then she let out a slow, trembling breath and covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes filled with tears, soft ones, warm ones. Not sadness. Something deeper. "You truly mean it?" she whispered. "Yes," he said. "I truly mean it." She leaned forward, placing her forehead gently against his. It was a Valoran sign of deep trust. He closed his eyes and breathed in the warm moment. "You have changed my world," she whispered. "You changed mine first," he whispered back. The floating lights gathered around them, glowing brighter as if celebrating. The air felt warm and peaceful. When they walked back into the palace hand in hand, the guards bowed respectfully. The nobles watched in silence, but their expressions were no longer full of shock. Many looked thoughtful. Some even smiled. The queen approached slowly, her long robe shimmering. She looked at Leora, then at Ethan. And then, to everyone's surprise, she smiled warmly. "My daughter," she said, "you have chosen with your heart. That is the strongest choice any leader can make." She turned to Ethan. "And you, human soldier? Welcome to our family." Ethan bowed his head, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. That night, the palace lights shimmered brighter than usual. The people of Valora whispered in excitement, not fear. The city felt different, as if something old had ended and something new had begun. A princess had chosen a human had chosen her back, and together, they would shape a future that neither world had ever imagined.